Welcome to today's webinar, Pure ActiveDR for Boosting Business Resiliency. Today's event is brought to you in partnership with Pure Storage, and we'll have a special guest from ESG, the Enterprise Strategy Group. This event is produced by Actual Tech Media. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We've got a great event lined up for you today. Before I introduce you to today's expert presenters, you should know that my name is David Davis, and I'll serve as your moderator for the event. We want this to be an educational event, and as such, we encourage you to use the questions box. It's there on the left-hand side of your audience console. We'll be answering our questions throughout the webinar electronically, so keep those questions coming during the presentation, and we'll do our best to answer every one of them. We'll also be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So bring us your disaster recovery challenges, and we have a great solution that we'll be talking about today. We also have a number of handouts and resources available on the left-hand side of the console in the Handouts tab. Make sure that you download those resources or open those links now because they won't be readily available after the presentation. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card prize. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's expert presenters. They are Mr. Tony Palmer, Senior Validation Analyst at the Enterprise Strategy Group, and Lisa Walker, Product Manager for FlashArray at Pure Storage. Tony and Lisa, thank you so much for being on the event today. I'll hand it off first to you, Tony. Take it away.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Palmer. I'm a Senior Validation Analyst with the Enterprise Strategy Group, and I'm here today to chat with Pure about some validation testing that we did recently on Pure ActiveDR. And with me today, actually hosting me today, is Lisa Walker from Pure. I'll let Lisa let you introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Tony, and thank you so much for being here. I am a product manager in the FlashArray group here at Pure Storage, and my focus is really helping you as customers to protect your growing data sets. Really happy to be here, and thank you for attending. So with that, Tony, just for customers or people who may not have joined one of these ESG sessions before, or this is their first time, can you possibly give us a brief introduction into ESG and what they're about?
Absolutely. So Enterprise Strategy Group is we're what it says here, an integrated IT analyst, research, validation, and strategy firm. And our goal is to help our clients like Pure and their customers like you all achieve business results through our research and advisory services. So we also do some consulting and we do custom content solutions as well. But what we did today was a validation of Pure ActiveDR.
And I understand recently you did a survey to IT and data protection professionals, really focused on their transition from traditional data backup processes to different data management strategies. Can you give us some insights on what you discovered during that survey?
I'd love to. So basically, excuse me, data drives most businesses today, and high data availability is really essential. Organizations have to have their data continuously available, not only to remain productive and efficient to generate revenue, right, but also to ensure compliance with corporate governance, industry requirements, and government regulations. So for that reason, lots of organizations are depending on data protection and disaster recovery strategies, right, with fast recovery times and recent recovery points.
That's very insightful, but can you talk a little bit more about that importance of the data to organizations today?
Oh, certainly. So it's really clear that data is already or will become the business, right? Even for traditional tangible goods organizations. 54% of the people that we surveyed basically said that data either is their business now or will be within the next 2 years. And sorry, and if you add in the people that are planning to offer data-centric products, the number jumps to 65%, so 2/3.
And I understand, I also know that you did some testing with Pure FlashArray latest replication feature. Can you take us through what testing you did on that?
Oh, Absolutely. So what we did was called a technical review, and in it we examined Pure Storage ActiveDR. Now, in the past, we've looked at Active Cluster, we've looked at a lot of other technologies offered by Pure, but we looked at ActiveDR this time around with a goal of validating its ability to provide near zero RPO protection with continuous replication, fast recovery, also looked at zero impact failover, and ease of deployment and management.
And with ActiveDR, that's available with version 6 of the Purity operating environment. What type of licensing did you need to do to get started using ActiveDR?
Basically none, right? Like every other feature, Pure provides ActiveDR with no additional license fees, and it's included as part of Pure's non-disruptive upgrades and the Evergreen subscription program. So it basically provides continuous asynchronous bidirectional replication for flash arrays to a secondary site, right? It provides near zero recovery point objectives, or RPOs, while it enables the use of the replica for multiple purposes.
And you just mentioned some of the other replication features that FlashArray has. What did you find that sets ActiveDR apart from those other replication features like Active Cluster and the async replication?
Well, it's very different from those offerings, mainly the thinking about it in terms of asynchronous, which is what it's closest to. But asynchronous is a periodic replication, right? It offers a 10-minute RPO, and it replicates every 5 minutes, right? So it's kind of on a scheduler. With ActiveDR, replication is continuous, and the RPO is really near zero. That's the main difference between the two.
When you look at kind of the key benefits that you think customers are going to be able to utilize, what did you come up with there? What did you see?
So really what's listed up here, right? So the key benefits are that near zero RPO, the ability to simply and easily recover quickly, being able to test your failover without losing your RPO. In other words, test the failover very simply in the same way that you would really do a disaster recovery event. There's no journals that you have to manage. And a key one that you'll learn a little bit more about later is the ability to pre-connect hosts at the DR site, right? And we'll talk about why that's super important.
And in terms of the architecture that you were using for testing, can you tell us a little bit about that?
We conducted testing, as you can see here, with two Pure FlashArray M50 systems, right? We designated one as production and one as DR, and we tested in a campus environment. The production system was configured with a pod named Pod1. That had 2 volumes in it. We used a standard workload generation tool, VDBench, to generate I/O against one of those 2 volumes. And then we just set up a simple script to write a date and timestamp to a file in the second volume.
And maybe you can dive into the details a little bit more about the test and the results that you did find.
I thought you'd never ask. Thank you very much. So first testing, right, we basically set up a live workload on the production flash array. So at this point, it was servicing almost 65,000 IOPS at sub-millisecond response times. And it was also driving more than a gigabyte per second of throughput as seen here. So, a not insignificant workload. So to begin, we created a replica link between the arrays. And what a replica link is a managed object that defines a replication relationship between 2 pods, right? Storage pods are the things that you saw in the previous slide, which is a group of volumes that are really it's a logical construct that allows you to do this kind of replication, DR and failback. So all we had to define here was the source pod, the remote array, and the remote pod name, which we selected from a pull-down list. So we really didn't have to type much in at all, just 3 clicks and we were off to the races. So on this screen, you see that once the link was created, the arrays automatically began baselining. The baselining process is like the one used in Active Cluster and async replication, right? This process populates the target with the initial copy of the data, and it uses Pure's existing asynchronous replication engine that can preserve both compression and deduplication. But because ActiveDR doesn't present active volumes from both sides, or both sites rather, no mediation systems required. Also, ActiveDR utilizes a mechanism to track writes with no journaling devices required either. So once baselining was complete, the systems automatically switched over to continuous replication. So when ActiveDR is replicating, writes are streamed continuously to the target rather than the periodic batch and forward method used by async to send that changed data at a configured interval, right? It was 5 minutes or greater in async, like I said before. This is one of the features that enables and really empowers organizations to get to near zero RPO.
And I bet a question that a lot of people have is, what does this do, and does this preserve the dedupe and compression aspects of our storage?
Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. So it does preserve dedupe and compression. It uses the async engine. And the continuous replication process maintains that compression over the wire as well that FlashArray already provides with other replication solutions. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and so next we looked at pre-connecting hosts, right? And it's hosts of the target site can be pre-connected to the volumes in the DR pod. And that's done to simplify failover, right? It takes away an extra step from the failover process. So as you can see here, we connected the volumes to the failover host. And at this point, everything's set up and the systems are completely ready for DR failover.
So if I'm a customer using this, what is the functionality of the pre-connecting failover host? What does that capability really help me with?
Well, it's a great feature to simplify DR operations, really. It's as simple as that. It means that after a failover, bringing up the target site is much easier, and it makes it faster to respond to outages and reduces the chance for human error. So what we did to simulate an outage at the production site, we stopped the script that was writing the date stamps, and then we simply clicked on ActiveDR at the target array and selected Promote Local Pod. So this is at the target, the DR site. We promoted the local pod using a pull-down menu. And it's important to note that this is exactly the same process that you would use to test disaster recovery, since this brings the target volume online, but continues replicating from the source system. So we are still technically running production at the source, and yet we've brought the DR volumes of the DR pod online.
So this sounds like it's really testing without having to stop replication, and it sounds like that's really the default behavior. Does this mean that really using the same command for the DR test and a real failover really helps to make sure that that same process is used and ensures that any kind of run books or orchestration steps being done during a test, those are the same ones during actual failover event, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this whole approach really mitigates the risks, both the programmatic risks that functions might not work the way expected during a real DR failover because the process is different, and it also mitigates the risk of human error, right? Because again, the processes aren't different at all. So you can use exactly the same scripts. It's easier to maintain them. It's easier to troubleshoot and debug rather than using different processes.
That's good to know.
So while the target site was promoted, we verified that the volumes had been replicated to the DR site. And then we opened the text file that we had been writing date and timestamps to, and we just added some text. We added the text now running production at the DR site. So it's really important to note here that while we're doing all this stuff essentially manually, point and click, Pure includes an adapter for VMware Site Recovery Manager that automates the entire failover process in VMware environments. And Pure is also actively working on integrations with other partners, right? But today, ActiveDR is completely scriptable and can be easily integrated into any existing manual or automated failover process. So at this point, we were ready to fail back to the original production site. And so first, we demoted the pod on the original production system to basically enable replication from the DR site to production. And then at that point, we just open the important data.txt file at the production site, and we see that the data that we inserted while the DR site was live had been replicated back to the production site. So finally, after that, we then demoted the pod on the DR site and restarted our script at the production site. And so the entire process, right? Creation of a link, failover, testing, fail back, took less than 4 minutes, start to finish. And we weren't trained beforehand. This is all a very, as everything with Pure, is a really intuitive experience. We really kind of just looked at the interface, walked through the new feature once, and we were ready to do this on our own without any help or any consulting required.
Tony, that's really great to hear. I'm glad you found that so simple and easy to pick up and understand. Was there anything specifically that you found that really did help simplify that failed back process? I know that's an important aspect of a DR, a full DR environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest for me was the fact that that the system just automatically reverses replication when we fail back. So as soon as we went to the original production system and said, okay, demote the pod, ActiveDR immediately started replicating back the changes that had been made and that were continuing to be made at the DR site in preparation for the failback.
Yeah, you mentioned before about eliminating some risks. This sounds like this is just another way that ActiveDR helps to eliminate that risk associated with manual processes and really, does some automation in that reversal of the relationship, replication relationships.
Exactly.
So after going through all of your tests and, what your findings, do you have any main takeaways or key thoughts about ActiveDR that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, definitely have a few. So, I guess I'll start with the fact that, you're maintaining your productivity is a key goal for any organization, right? To maintain, to remain competitive, I should say. And for that reason, businesses need to implement data protection and disaster recovery strategies, right? Data's got to be available for business use and compliance with industry and corporate requirements. And but data copies at a secondary site are a costly resource, right? That normally sits idle, waiting to be needed. So storing this and consume storage, power, cooling, management resources, and also it's really the management resources that we're concerned about. So what we did was we validated that Purity ActiveDR simplifies disaster recovery. Right, it makes continuous replication, failover, and failback transparent, and it was really effortless. We validated the ease of setting up intelligent, efficient DR replication, eliminating traditional complexity of manual setup, and we verified that ActiveDR is really configured without downtime, without the need of expensive professional services or the days to weeks of administrative effort that are normally required. We validated, as I said, the asynchronous and active cluster software before it, and ActiveDR is following in that tradition really well. Pure Storage has always strived for simplicity, right? Just keeping it easy. And in ESG's view, the company's delivered yet again. ActiveDR makes minimizing RPOs simple, makes it cost effective for any application, any organization across any distance. Given the competitive advantage that maximizing uptime delivers, ActiveDR is definitely well worth a look.
Well, Tony, I'm so grateful that you took some time to take a look at ActiveDR and your time here for taking us through your testing and findings of ActiveDR. Really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. So I think we'll turn it back to the moderator for some questions.
Yeah, great presentation, Tony and Lisa. Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing with us your testing and analysis of the Pure ActiveDR solution. We do have a number of questions coming in from the audience. First question I wanted to ask is, what's the distance, or what distance between two flash arrays does ActiveDR support?
So in reality, there's no limit in distance. There's no the typical limiting factor for synchronous and some asynchronous replication solutions is latency, right? Because you have to acknowledge that the data has gotten to where it's gotten before you can accept more writes, and that will constrain the performance of the production environment. And that's completely addressed by ActiveDR. There's no distance requirement at all.
Very nice. I like that. Next question, they're asking, with ActiveDR, is there a need for dedicated ports in addition to traditional replication?
Oh, no, not at all. It uses exactly the same ports as you would use for active cluster or asynchronous.
Excellent. And then next question, John here, he wants to know, is the DR failover process automatic?
I would say that using say VMware Site Recovery Manager, you can make it completely automatic in that sense. You can automate it via scripting today, but it's not a cluster solution. So you don't have, it's not an active type of a solution, and that's what people think mostly when they say is an automatic failover, because with an active solution you don't have to failover, right? So in this case, not in the same way that active cluster is, but it's automatable for sure.
Excellent, excellent. And then what's the best way to automate ActiveDR failover? Is there scripting, or how do you recommend people do that?
Well, we talked about that a little bit before, right? And so if you have if it's a VMware environment that you're trying to protect today, you have SRM. If you're using other tools for your IT automation, or you want to just script it yourself, you can, and you can completely automate it just with a very short shell script or two.
Very nice. I like that flexibility there. Looks like we're running out of time here in our Q&A session, but last question I wanted to ask you, Lisa, is what should people do to learn more about ActiveDR? What do you recommend?
Well, first of all, I recommend taking a look at the report and the testing and findings that Tony and his group worked on. You can find that at esgglobal.com, ESG, I should say, -global.com. And then in terms of finding out more about ActiveDR itself, the specifications, details about the underpinnings and how it works, just go to purestorage.com. We have information at our link /product/purity. So there's a lot of good resources there, technical information that should help you get on your way. And I highly recommend, if you have a flash array, it's something, as Tony mentioned, right? You don't need a license. You can just turn it on and try it. It's worth giving a shot.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lisa and Tony. Really great presentation, excellent webinar. We appreciate Pure Storage supporting today's event. And thank you to everyone for joining us on the webinar. And before we go, I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. That's going to Charlie Chen from California. Congratulations. We'll reach out to you, deliver that gift card. And finally, before you go, don't forget to download the handouts. Those are on the left-hand side there in your audience console. You've got the ESG technical review on the Pure Storage ActiveDR solution. Make sure that you check that out, download it now. Also, the data sheet on Purity ActiveDR, and then links to the ActiveDR whiteboard video, and then the demo on how to rethink business resiliency with ActiveDR. Lots of good links there, resources in the handouts tab. Don't forget about downloading those before you go. Thank you to Pure Storage for supporting today's webinar. And of course, thank you to everyone out there in the audience for joining today's event. We appreciate your support, and we hope that you learned a lot. I know that I did. We will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.